Hello, my name's Suzanne Huber, and I'm a marketing and business development consultant, and I'm an outlier.
Welcome to Outlier on Air with Ever Gonzalez, the show where we interview the founders, disruptors, and mavens of the world. Learn how grit, failure, and success are all a part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, the podcast where we interview founders, disruptors, and mavens. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have Suzanne Huber. She's a serial entrepreneur and doing amazing things up in Canada. Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Ever.
You are Canadian. We love Canadians. We've interviewed a lot of Canadians. We have a lot of Canadian friends. So we are hoping to add you to the list of our Outlier Canadian friends for sure. We're excited to have you on the show, so welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Let's, we're going to get into you, what you're doing now, what you've done in the past. Like we discussed, the good, the bad, and the ugly of being an entrepreneur. We're going to dig into all of that. But right now, let's talk about where you're calling us from. Where do you live?
I live out of Toronto, Canada.
How's life out of Toronto?
Toronto's great. It's a little bit more lively than my hometown, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, but that's
Nice.
definitely a wonderful community there too, and definitely helped establish myself as an entrepreneur in my hometown.
Well, let's discuss it. As far as entrepreneurship and startups, and maybe even just the entire business vibe and community there. What's it like there?
Well, I would say it's just a very supportive community of your ambitions. I was able to launch a company and find new customers and work with some influential entrepreneurs who helped mentor me along the way. So it really put me in a position to move to Toronto with some wonderful skills and experiences from a very supportive community.
And how long you been there in Toronto now?
About 4 years.
Okay. What's the plan?
What's the plan? Well,
as far as the living situation, you're going to stick around, or you're looking?
I am going to stick around. I just bought a condo here downtown over the last year. So
Congrats.
Thank you. So I put some roots in, and I definitely plan on sticking around here, though I like moving around.
Okay. Well, good. We'll definitely check in on you from time to time and see where you're at and what you're doing. Okay. So let's get into this. For our audience, we want to work our way backwards, right? So we want to talk about the things that you're doing now. I know you've had a software company in the past that you've done, and like I mentioned, you're a serial entrepreneur. But let's talk about what you're doing now. What keeps you busy? What's bringing in revenue for you right now?
Sure. Well, I am working as a marketing and business development consultant in a handful of companies right now. I'm spread across a few industries. I'm working with a builder, an NGO, a professional services company. I'm business coaching a little bit. So it's very diverse, but I love it. And it gives me lots of energy when I'm, working in multiple businesses, and I really like everybody I work with. So I'm very driven and, passionate about my clients and the work I'm doing.
So you said you're kind of spread across a few different industries. What's the sweet spot as far as the type of entrepreneur, or maybe even the size of company that you're working with right now?
Sure. Well, I would say about the mid-size company. I have sort of graduated from working with some of the really, really small ones, and, over time, and, you get some experience. I've started working with some more mid to large size companies. And the sweet spot for me is mostly consulting and strategy, digital marketing campaigns, and developing content.
So when I come to you for help with my company, one of our listeners comes to you for help with their company. What are we going to expect as far as the scope of work that you do? Are we talking like little projects that we need help with? Are you talking long-term type of contracts? What do you prefer, and what are you working on now?
Well, I do a little bit of ad hoc, but I also have some long-term relationships. A couple of my customers I've been working with for, 2 or 3 years now.
Nice.
Yeah. So, you have these great relationships with people, and, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So we continue to collaborate, and we continue to work together. And I guess what a listener could expect is figuring out a plan for growth. Where are you going to get from A to B? What are the steps you have to take to get there? It all just comes down to the strategy.
you've obviously, like I mentioned, you're a serial entrepreneur. You've worked on a few different things, and you're successful in your past endeavors. You're still fairly young, and those that are like, yeah, I'm running a multi-million-dollar business, or a good sized business. She's young, and I think I just need somebody with more experience. What would you have to say to somebody like that?
Well, fortunately, when it comes to consulting, which is where I've sort of found my niche that I really love to do, is all of the advice that you give to a client is all custom and based on their business, their challenges, where they have to go. So as far as my age goes, it doesn't really come up very often because the proof is in the pudding and in the pitch. And when you're giving people advice that's custom to their business, you can see what's going to happen. And I guess the credibility is sort of built into the advice and the advising.
Have you had any issues come up because of your age or maybe even your gender?
Well, my age, probably when I first started my career, I was launching a software company selling software to hotels. Nice. And I just graduated university and I didn't have a lot of experience, selling to hotels of that caliber. So some of them thought it was funny, like they kind of would laugh at me, or they thought it was humorous that I was coming in and pitching this tech to them. But it wasn't that much of a setback. And as far as my gender goes, not really so much consulting. I would say perhaps a little bit, in some employment backgrounds, but never as an entrepreneur.
Okay, good. Now let's get into the software company then that you started off with. This you offered real-time flight information and digital advertising to hotels, and you started in Canada. You moved into the U.S. market. Tell us about that company and how it was different from what seems like there are a million other companies that kind of do that same thing. So tell us when you got started and how did it go?
That's right. Well, that happened a long time ago. I think it was 2007 and 2008.
Yeah, early, right? Nice.
Right, yeah. So this was the very first thing I ever did in my career was launch a company. And the founder actually did arrivals, departures, baggage, signage at the airport. And he invented this silver box that could stream live or real-time information as you read it at the airport. So because he owned the data stream happening at airports, we were able to bring the information and sell it to hotels.
So you were successful with it, like I mentioned, Canada and the U.S. How long did you do that, and what happened? Was there a buyout? Did it just fade away? What happened?
Right. Well, I was actually an employee in this case, which was my trigger point to lead me into my first taste of entrepreneurship. I was working, it was a smaller family business, and the founder invested in me growing it. And the company is still around. And he, used some of the revenues from that to buy out one of his partners, he told me lately, which is great. Nice. So the relationship was still there, but it just hit a point where it was time to grow and scale. And the parent company was landing big airline clientele and what have you. So it just kind of hit a point where this was as far as it was going to go. It needed more, resources, people, more oomph. And, it just sort of hit a point where it was like time for me to sort of branch out and do my own thing. So I did that over the course of about 2 years, and then I went on to start my own consulting company.
Yeah, so you got the taste of entrepreneurship there.
That's right. Yeah. So, and I mean, it was a wonderful experience because I was working with a brilliant entrepreneur, and he was investing in my ambition. He just said, I have this business registered, figure it out type of thing. So he let me go pretty free rein, and, I was able to get the results based on his, experience, support, and investment.
You can't ask for a better education than that, right? I mean, you went to university and we can go to school and take courses and stuff like that. But actually being in the real world, hands-on, having that freedom, plus a little bit of a safety net as well. I mean, what an amazing experience. Any negatives from that experience as far as did you have too much freedom and then now you brought that mindset into your other ventures in the future?
Well, I wouldn't say it was negative so much as, we wish, and I think Kim and I both now today, looking back, I think we both wish that we continued on and grew it further.
Uh-huh.
Like they still have that base of customers, these years later and whatnot. But I think we both wish that we took it further than we did.
before while you were at university, and then you went on here. Did you think that entrepreneurship was going to be, in your future?
I joke around about how I sort of Forrest Gump my way through all these companies I've been in, and I didn't know I was necessarily an entrepreneur. I found myself in this very autonomous role, and from there, because I did that experience and I had the support and the trust and the mentoring, it helped me build some confidence to try and do it on my own.
What do you do best right now?
What do I do best right now? Probably the strategy consulting, like the business coaching. So how to get from point A to point B, and this is what you have to do on the internet, and these are things you have to say and communicate about yourself.
Yeah, let's dig into that. As like we mentioned, our audience, right? They're entrepreneurs, they're outliers, they're a little bit different. They're also in the trenches, either starting or have started their own companies, and so they're out there hustling and trying to make things happen every single day.
Right.
With your experience, with the things you've done, with the clients that you have now, what's the biggest challenge that you see your clients, or maybe even entrepreneurs in general, make when they're trying to just build their own little empire?
That's right. Well, I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in so many tasks. And when you're first launching a company, it's like all adrenaline for the first year, and you don't know if you're focusing on the right things or not. And over time, with more practice, and if you go through a few different businesses, success, failure, been there through both. The number one most important thing, of course, is sales, right? If you're not growing, you don't have a business.
So are they the people that you're working with, and just entrepreneurs in general that you associate with? Sometimes I think that we get so caught up in our product or our service, and like you mentioned, we don't stop to think sometimes of, well, who are we going to sell this to? Not only that, who are we going to sell it to, but how are we going to sell it to them? So you're seeing that as one of the major weaknesses that you're seeing?
Definitely, sure. And, some people will overinvest in something before it has any traction in the market. Like, do you know anybody is willing to pay that? Do you know at what price points somebody's willing to pay at? Do you have enough cash to make it through the next, 1 to 2 years when you're, pre-revenue, or in the case of a tech company, or if you're bootstrapping, like you need to have some clients before you go all the way, right?
So what do you recommend?
Well, I mean, it depends on your personality and, what kind of a cushion you have. You have to have a natural aptitude to sales for sure. Again, no growth, no revenue, no business. So as far as that goes, it's always having that hustle going on all the time. You have a project ending or you land a big customer. You don't want to have one big customer leave and then you don't have a business anymore. You always got to be looking ahead and needing to grow and what's next and who can I work with, or, what type of a client do I like? Like, I mean, you want to go out there and find a business too. But now with some experience that I have, I want to work with only people that I really like. Nice people and, have these great relationships with. So that's also really important too. If you want to be sustainable, it's got to have that benefit. You have to provide value, and you also have to have good relationships.
I love it. It's tough, when we're first starting off, like we'll take anybody on as a client, even the ones that we, maybe we don't like, maybe they're not a good fit for what we do. But I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we make early on. We're like, yes, we will open the doors to anybody. As we start to grow and we start to kind of figure things out on our own, I'm okay with firing clients that either aren't paying, don't fit into the things that we're trying to do. Are you seeing any of that with the people you're working with?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when people first start out, they as you just said, they'll take on anybody as a client. But I think.
What about you? Have you taken that? Has that happened to you?
Oh, of course it has.
Yeah.
I try to be on the offense of that now as much as possible, where I have, of course, a contract in place and, take an initial deposit down always. And, just making sure that you're, protecting yourself, right? Because I've had a client before where he was late paying his monthly invoice for 2 or 3 times. And then, eventually, unfortunately, he went bankrupt. So, there's warning signs there. If people can't pay their bills, don't stick around too long.
Yeah, for sure. You got to take care of your company.
That's right.
I love talking to people like you and like therapists or like coaches, those that have this knowledge, a specific type of knowledge and wisdom that they kind of impart to either their audience or their clients. So in your case, you have this specific skill set
I mentor, millennials. Mentoring millennials is a thing that seems to be kind of taking shape for me a little bit lately. One of my past clients I did some coaching with, and there's a lot of young millennials with the shift in the marketplace that want to go out on their own and start their own company. Because I've done it, and it's working now for me. After some trials and tribulations, they want some advice and they want to be able to do it too.
Let's talk about millennials since you brought it up.
Sure.
There's so much talk, and we read so many things about millennials this, millennials that. You've worked with them, and then with those that are not considered millennials anymore. Is there really a difference? Is this just a thing that is funny and cool to write about, the difference between how it was then to how it is now? Are you seeing a difference in their attitude and in their work ethic maybe, or even in their ideas?
Sure. Well, I would just say that, there's a lot of old dated management practices that don't seem to be working anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, I know the millennials take a lot of heat, and ultimately they just want to have empowering work like anybody else. I mean, if I was an employer in a corporation, I might have a different view than somebody who's coaching millennials who want to start their own company, because I feel like those are different contexts. But a lot of the millennials out there they want to work hard. They want to work with a purpose. A lot of them are leaving traditional companies to go work in startups, and they want to have the meaningful work, right?
And you can see it, and they're different, and I love the fact that they're different. We work with a lot of millennials. We work with a lot of young people, and they're doing something a little bit different, and they're kind of choosing their own path now. Even before it was you get out of school, you go work at a company for 40 years, you get your watch at the end when you retire. One company your entire career. Now we're like free agents. It almost feels like, right? And I think millennials are leading the way when it comes to that type of lifestyle and work lifestyle, even.
Well, yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's difficult for them to find stable jobs these days. And, a lot of companies expect you to work tons of overtime.
Sure.
So, you may as well put some of that energy into your own thing.
I love it. Good. And good for you for helping them find a purpose, or even the steps to take to kind of do their own thing. Now, let's talk about you and the business now for a little bit.
Sure.
What is this going to look like, speaking of your business, in 3 years?
Well, in 3 years, I haven't decided if I either want to hire employees or just continue on with other freelancers and contractors as needed.
Uh-huh.
And in 3 years, I hope to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now, working with clients that I love, helping them grow their companies, helping support them as they grow and evolve to the needs of the marketplace. Sometimes people just need some encouragement too. So it's just really great to work with people while they're focusing on, becoming better. Working with all the exact same people as right now, that will be great, but I imagine there will be some new faces. And I'd like to, maybe move into the US and, start penetrating and getting some clients out there, since, everything's freelance these days.
I love it. Do it. And we're here to help. So, but you brought something up that I like. You're trying to figure out whether you're going to kind of stay, the kind of solopreneur type of business, or whether you're going to bring in others to kind of make this more of an agency.
Right.
I have that discussion with people all the time. It seems like, they like the freedom of doing their own thing. They're working with a lot of clients, a lot of freelancers, but then sometimes they kind of have the itch too to grow the business into like a full-blown agency with employees and things like that. And that almost becomes a job all by itself, right? Managing these type of employees and HR and payroll and all that stuff. What's
right.
I don't know if it's a hang-up, but you're kind of on the fence. You don't really know how you're going to move forward. Why?
Well, I guess that's sort of the trigger point. I like being able to work my own hours and my own schedule. If I want to work 13 hours one day, 5 or 6 hours the next. I like the lifestyle of, doing my own thing and farming out the pieces that I can't do myself. If you have an agency, then you have to start working, tons of overtime, and it's just that commitment. I've had office space before, and it's kind of nice to be small and agile.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. We've done the same thing. We've done both, and right now I have our podcasting studio out of my home, and it's great. And when we need to meet, we just go somewhere and we meet, right, with my team, or just do it online. It's pretty addicting, and I don't know that I'm ever going to go back to having an office and a studio outside of the home, but we'll see. I like that I'm not the only one having to think about those things and worry about those things.
That's right.
Now, let's talk about this. Growing up, what were your parents like? And I know we kind of talked about, you said you weren't really at that point thinking about entrepreneurship, but tell us where you grew up, how you grew up, and what kind of influence your parents had to the things that you're doing now, whether they did or they didn't have an influence in that.
Well, I mean, my parents always said I could kind of be whoever I want to be, and they just wanted me to go to university and get an education. So that was their criteria. But my mom and dad have always been very supportive of me. I think that my risk tolerance was certainly a lot higher than theirs in my 20s and in the earlier stages of my career.
Sure.
And, they definitely, like I'm sure you hear all the time, they wanted me to, get a good job and, don't take too much chance or risks. I mean, I've had some failures too, and I've had some messes I've had to clean up. And, now finally, fast forward all this time later, 7 or 8 years later, my mom and dad are finally like, okay, this is who you are. We accept that. And, you're an entrepreneur. You're not a square peg in a round hole.
Nice.
And we accept that now, too.
It's funny. I can't remember who I was talking to. I can't remember if it was just a friend or somebody on for an interview. But they were saying that they're like 33, 34, a serial entrepreneur, and their parents are still waiting for them to, like, get a real job. They haven't processed the fact that they're a little bit different, or basically an entrepreneur. And so this guy was telling me that his parents keep waiting for them to go be a doctor or a lawyer or get a real job, and he's saying that's never going to happen. So good, your parents seem to understand who you really are and what you're about. So I'm assuming that's a good feeling, and it kind of and encourages you to go and do your own thing still.
Definitely. They're very supportive, and, they've always tried to help me along the way as needed. And, now my mom's advice is, there's only so many hours you can work in a day, don't take on too much work. So she's sort of changed gears now and just wants to make sure that I'm not, going too hard, being a workaholic.
Yeah, I can see that. Tell us about your biggest, maybe not failure, but your biggest challenge, right? What was your biggest challenge as you've been on this entrepreneurial journey? It could have been early on or in the middle, or even now. And how did you overcome it?
Well, I would say one of the biggest things was, I always I've launched some tech companies before, and, they require a lot of capital and they need bodies and you need to understand the coding. And I've kind of gone on and off this freelancing track a few times. And now I've finally just come to terms with the fact that this is what you're the best at. This is where you have the most control over things, and this is where you're happiest. So it took a long time, and jumping into a different company, and I became an employee for a little while. So as far as figuring out my identity and what I want to do with my career, and what I want to do as far as an entrepreneur goes, even I've just finally come to peace with the fact that I'm doing what I want to be doing now.
Can you see yourself being an employee again?
Probably not. No.
Good for you. Good answer.
No. And
not that there's anything wrong with that, right? I mean, some people want to be employees, but so right now you can't see that happening for you.
I've had some good experiences as an employee, and it's nice to work with a team, and that's great. But I like being able to control my own income. I don't need to be managed. I'm definitely an entrepreneur. That's for sure.
I love it.
But because I was an employee for a little while and I worked in some corporations, now I'm able to work as a consultant in companies those sizes.
With again, the experiences you had, what you're doing now, you have a lot of entrepreneurs listening to you right now. Like I mentioned, they're in the trenches. What advice would you give to them right now? Something they can kind of really take into their own lives that can help them the fastest kind of get to that next level. In general.
Sure. Well, I mean, you always need to be making sure you're taking care of yourself as well, right? I mean, the times I became an employee again, it was after I was in a failed startup. So I had to, right? And that's okay too. You might have to go on and off the path a little bit to, find your way, and it might take longer than you think. But if you stay dedicated to it and you're doing what you truly love and you work really hard at it and you're constantly evolving and growing your skills to stay, at the top of your game, then, the world's yours. It might take longer than you think. It might be more expensive than you think. You might learn some rough lessons, but, overall it's worth it.
Great answer. I love it. Mm-hmm. When all of this is said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
Just as somebody who is really good at helping people get their companies off the ground, growing their firms, and just as a supportive advisor who help people grow their companies.
Well, you're certainly well on your way, right?
Yeah, hopefully it continues on. Yeah.
Good. So as we wrap this up, then, for those that are interested, that want to get in touch with you, they're excited about the things that you're doing, or just kind of want to maybe do an opening, like consulting with you on some ideas. Where can we find you online?
You can find me online at my website, SuzanneHuber.com, or I'm very active on social media, on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. So, I'm always up for, having a conversation and collaborating. So feel free to reach out and connect.
I love it. So Outliers, you can go to outliermagazine.co. That's outliermagazine.co. First of all, review and the podcast. Feel free to reach out to Suzanne. We're going to have links to her website, social media accounts. Say hello, work with her. She obviously knows what she's doing, and she has a pretty cool story. Suzanne, hey, this has been amazing. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and for sharing your words of wisdom and just kind of opening up to us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ever.
Great. So, Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.